After the car accident, I pretended to have amnesia to amuse my husband and son. Who are you? There was a glimmer of joy in the son's eyes, and he led the woman standing outside the ward in. She said to me, "Auntie, my parents and I are here to visit the patient." My husband stood by and said nothing, tacitly agreeing to be called son. 1. "Auntie, my parents and I are here to visit the patient." The sweet voice of a baby echoed in the ward. With a bandage on my forehead, I looked down at my 5-year-old son, Andrew Johnson, who was holding one of his children in each hand with a sly smile on his face. Mark Johnson, who was in a suit and tie beside me, had no intention of correcting me for calling him son. Instead, he looked at me with a hint of inquiry. The woman held by Andrew was wearing a white long dress. She had an elegant and gentle temperament. At this moment, she felt a little embarrassed when I looked at her, so she tucked her hair behind her ears. Andrew saw me staring at Amelia and stood in front of Amelia vigilantly in a protective manner. If I really lost my memory, I would really think that the person standing in front of me was a loving family of 3. Andrew tugged at Mark's hand and whispered, "Dad, since Mom has lost her memory, can you guys get a divorce?" Although Andrew spoke in a low voice, he controlled the volume so that I could hear him clearly. I know his little tricks. He is punishing me because I said a few words to him yesterday and embarrassed him in front of the servants, so he got angry. This was Andrew's usual prank. He enjoyed punishing me. But I don't want to play his pranks anymore. Since I said I have lost my memory, I will continue to pretend. Pretend that there is no such son and no such husband. Excuse me. Who are you? Andrew was a little surprised and a little flustered. You really don't remember me? There is no way you don't remember me. I am your most beloved child. Mark frowned, his eyes turned cold, and his voice was filled with impatience. Abigail Young, stop pretending. The doctor said it was just a mild concussion. Not serious. Don't think you can avoid divorce just because you have lost your memory. That's right, stop pretending. You love us so much, how could you forget us? Andrew's cold and stern look was exactly the same as Mark's. I just had a headache. Before I could say anything, the nurse at the door knocked and said, "The patient needs to rest. Anyone who is not necessary, please leave first." Mark and Andrew took Amelia away without saying a word. The young nurse came in and said to me, "Your husband just came and is going out to buy you some porridge." My husband? I'm a bit confused. Didn't you just kick out my husband? The young nurse blinked her eyes and said, "Yes, actually I was working in the obstetrics and gynecology department 4 years ago, and I have seen you several times. You are so beautiful. It is really hard to forget you. I did have my prenatal checkup in this hospital 4 years ago, but Mark never came to accompany me once." The nurse continued, "And your husband is one of the few people who didn't play with his phone the entire time. He was anxiously waiting at the door for you to finish the examination. He was tall and handsome and so attentive and loyal. He made us young nurses believe in love again. By the way, who are those 2 big and small? They are handsome, but their faces are as dark as if they were debt collectors." I couldn't help laughing out loud. Mark never came for any of the 14 prenatal checkups. The person who accompanied me was Michael Young. He was my younger brother, who was 5 years younger than me. He was just 18 years old at that time. I didn't explain my relationship with Mark and Andrew. After all, we would soon be separated. After a while, Michael came in panting, carrying a lunchbox. I've been hungry for a long time. I haven't eaten anything all day, and my stomach is already aching. Michael quickly opened the porridge, placed it on the small table, and arranged the spoon, napkin, and paper cup neatly. "This is warm water, and this is your favorite preserved egg and lean meat porridge. Eat first, and I'll peel the eggs for you." I accepted his care with peace of mind. From the first time I saw Michael when he was brought back by my grandfather at the age of 15, he automatically became my most loyal servant. After eating a few mouthfuls of porridge, I felt my stomachache eased. When I looked up, I saw Michael's eyes were red. "You don't know, I was scared to death when I heard that you had a car accident." His lips trembled and his voice was a little choked. A sense of sourness suddenly surged up the tip of my nose. Who wouldn't be afraid when facing a car accident? I was just lucky that I wasn't hurt. I was afraid that Mark and Andrew would worry, so I thought of pretending to have amnesia as a joke to amuse them. But how can a heartless person worry about me? 2. I was discharged from the hospital within a few days. I insisted to explain to the doctor that except for Mark and Andrew, I could remember everything else. After being discharged from the hospital, the doctor told Mark that it was temporary amnesia caused by concussion, and he would slowly remember it after recovering. I returned home to Mark. Beautiful piano music came from the living room. Amelia and Andrew played piano together. After the song, Amelia gave a thumbs up and praised, "Our little pianist is amazing." Andrew blushed and chuckled, "Obviously you taught me well." A picture of a loving mother and a filial son. I walked upstairs without changing my expression. When Andrew saw me, the smile on his face disappeared. Amelia quickly stood up and said, "Mrs. Johnson, how are you?" I stood on the stairs and nodded to her. "I'm almost well now, you can continue." I don't hate Amelia. I'm just jealous of her. Amelia is not the third party in my marriage to Mark. She is Mark's unforgettable first love. Although Mark and I are married, there is one thing that is true. The one who is not loved is the third party. When Mark was 18 at the prime of his life, I saw for the first time that he loved someone so passionately. Last month, Taylor declared bankruptcy and Amelia was forced to return home. Amelia used all her savings to fill Taylor's debt gap. But as a music major, it was not easy for her to find a high-paying job in China. Mark found her and asked her to be Andrew's piano teacher, earning her $600,000 a month. 3. The new mom is so nice. I love her the most. Andrew said loudly in the living room. "Master Johnson, I'm not. Don't call me that anymore." Amelia looked at Andrew awkwardly. Andrew was a little dissatisfied with her address and hugged Amelia's thigh affectionately. "If you call me Master Johnson again, I will be angry. You have to call me Andrew. You are much gentler than my mother. I like you the most." He glanced towards the bedroom upstairs and seeing that I hadn't come out yet, he continued, "Can you live in my house? I want to be able to see you as soon as I wake up." My dad has agreed. "Why don't you live in my house? My house is so luxurious, you can have whatever you want." Mark actually suggested to Amelia that they live here. There are plenty of rooms and she wouldn't have to run around. Besides, Amelia is penniless now. But Amelia insisted on renting a house outside and rejected Mark's proposal. "Master Johnson. Andrew, you should continue practicing today's piano piece." Andrew shook his head and insisted on letting her live at home. "Are you afraid of my mother? Don't worry, my father and I will protect you. She listens to my father and won't do anything to you. Andrew is my son. He is very smart and he knows best what to say to hit my pain points." I put on the pearl earrings and walked out slowly. Seeing me coming downstairs, Amelia was a little embarrassed. "Mrs. Johnson, It's okay, Amelia, you can just stay here. I know you take the bus for 3 hours every day." I took the shoes handed to me by the servant and said, "Don't feel any psychological burden. I'm also very happy that you can come back." Andrew was a little surprised and stunned. In the past, if my father called out the name Amelia when he was drunk, my mother would cry with red eyes. Yes, Amelia's visit to his house last month was not the first time Andrew and Amelia met. He had secretly seen the photos of women that his father carefully kept in his father's drawer, as well as the names of other women that he muttered when he was drunk. This allowed him to find the best way to punish his mother. But now this killer weapon is no longer effective. "I want to eat ice cream. Give me 2, no, I want 10. The only response he got was the sound of me closing the door. I was unkempt every day during the days I was in the hospital. Now that I'm finally discharged, I have to go to the beauty salon to do some skincare. The driver has been waiting outside the door for a long time. Andrew inside the door put away the expression on his face. "Master, the ice cream is here." The servant hurriedly took it out of the refrigerator. "Who wants to eat it?" He threw the ice cream on the ground. He stared at the closed door. Did Mom really not remember him? 4. Mark's mother Madison knew that Amelia had returned and that Mark asked her to be Andrew's piano teacher, so she rushed over with several bags of luxury goods. On the sofa, the elegant lady held Amelia's hand and said, "Amelia, my dear child, you have suffered so much. If you had been with Mark from the beginning, and Mark had helped to manage Taylor Group, how could your family be bankrupt now?" Amelia was a little panicked. "Aunt Madison, you can't say that. What happened in the past is a foregone conclusion. Now Johnson is willing to give me a job, and I am very grateful to him. There's nothing to hide. I feel relieved to leave Andrew to you now. Madison patted her hands with satisfaction. Madison whispered, Mark is getting a divorce, did you know that? He wanted a divorce the moment you came back, doesn't that mean anything? Don't worry, even Andrew likes you very much. You won't be wronged in our family, and Mark will help your Taylor family turn things around. Madison came over without telling me to entertain her, even though she knew I was at home. I was tactful enough not to disturb them while they were reminiscing about the past. Not only Mark and Andrew like Amelia, but Mark's mother Madison also likes Amelia. Even before Mark and I got married, Madison wanted Amelia to be her daughter-in-law. Amelia comes from a scholarly family and is a good match for the Johnson family. It just so happened that Mark fell in love with Amelia at first sight, and Madison was even more delighted. She immediately thought about preparing a marriage between the two families. Unfortunately, Amelia didn't like Mark. She decisively rejected Mark's confession and went abroad to continue her music studies. Although Madison felt a little regretful, she liked Amelia more and thought she was a girl with ideas and aspirations. As for me, I was born in a poor family, was vain, and coveted fame and fortune, so I would do anything to marry Mark. I could see that Madison actually disdained and even hated me, but her good upbringing prevented her from showing it too obviously. I sometimes think that if Amelia had married Mark from the beginning, it would have been a happy ending for everyone. 5. My phone vibrated and I opened it. The text message reminded me that the accident insurance claim for the last car accident had arrived. I thought I would slowly forget what happened on the day of the car accident because of fear. But when I close my eyes, everything seems like yesterday. It was raining heavily that day and Mark and I were on the highway. Someone called Mark and I could hear the voice on the other end of the line clearly. Mr. Johnson, there is a group of debt collectors who are going to cause trouble at the Taylor family. They are going to cause trouble for the eldest daughter of the Taylor family. Mark glanced sideways at me. I knew he was not asking for my permission, but was telling me that he was going to Taylor's house to find Amelia. The current direction is the opposite direction of Taylor's house. I whispered, please drop me off at the service area ahead. I'll take a taxi back by myself. As soon as I got off the car, I was still soaked even though I quickly opened my umbrella. A black Bentley whizzed past me, splashing water on my face, and my rusty relationship encountered rainy days again. However, the car I took was old and it skidded on the highway. The moment the car lost control, I got scared all over and quickly fastened my seatbelt in the back seat. My heart was beating fast and my mind was blank. With a loud bang, my head hit the car window hard. At this moment, time seemed to slow down. My mind uncontrollably recalled the first half of my life, but they were all memories centered around Mark. When I was 10 years old, my parents gritted their teeth and took out a loan to buy a villa in the richest area of Beijing, and that's when I met Mark. My parents told me that I must try my best to please him, saying that he is the prince of the Beijing circle. Mark was very handsome and I liked to hang out with him, so I followed him around for 7 years. At the age of 17, I seemed to like Mark, but he hated me. I loved him the most for a year, but I was called a bootlicker by people in his circle, and people around me called me clown sister. At the age of 18, Mark fell in love with Amelia. I stood behind him, watching him flirt with Amelia, and then watched him become depressed after a breakup. At the age of 21, Mark was drunk and pushed me down on the bed and kissed me, calling Amelia's name over and over again. I should have pushed him away and slapped him, but my hand retreated. My dad's company is running out of cash and needs a large sum of money, and being with Mark has been the wish of my parents and me for the past decade. I endured it silently. Mark called Amelia's name for as long as he tormented me. Our affair was soon known to Mark's grandfather. The Johnson family has always been a very traditional family. He asked Mark to marry me, and I married Mark as I wished. At the age of 22, I got pregnant. The baby was very stressful. I had severe morning sickness and the delivery was difficult. Memory is a crisscross of pain. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying in the hospital ward. I felt sick all over and had a splitting headache. At the age of 27, my son called Amelia Mom in front of me at the bedside, and my husband agreed. I pretended that I didn't care, but countless moments hurt me. The person I don't want to lose is hoping that I will leave soon. I choose to remain silent. Perhaps happiness does not belong to me. Would you say bad things to the people you love? I really wanted to ask Mark and Andrew, but when they met Amelia, I thought I knew the answer. Mark fell in love with Amelia at first sight. Andrew liked Amelia at first sight. This was the first time Andrew showed his liking for someone else. People always cling to things they recognize at first sight. Andrew is becoming more and more like his father, in appearance, personality, and hobbies. They like Amelia. I never thought of Amelia as a third party, because from that night on, I stole things that belonged to Amelia. The reason why people suffer is that they pursue the wrong things. I think this marriage is over. It's time to return Mark and Andrew to Amelia. 6. In fact, Mark had already drafted the divorce agreement on the day Amelia came back. He had wanted to leave her a long time ago and pursue Amelia again. As he wished, I notified the Johnson family's lawyer and went to Mark's company together. I agreed to divorce. I looked at him calmly. Mark was a little surprised. Attorney Brown handed each person a divorce agreement. I quickly signed my name on the paper. Mark paused when he was about to sign, following him for 16 years. Andrew belongs to me. He looked at me with a tentative look. I nodded. I don't want either of them. He looked at me deeply again, trying to capture the sadness, grief, and reluctance he wanted to see on my face. In the future, they will probably feel disgusted. There were a lot of things to pack up, and luckily I booked 3 companies with enough manpower, so everything was packed and loaded onto the truck in less than 2 hours. The house suddenly became empty, and when Mark came back and saw it, he would definitely feel that the house had suddenly become clean and tidy. He never liked having too many things at home, but now they are all gone. I thoughtfully left plenty of space for the hostess who was about to move in. Before walking out of the yard, I took one last look at the villa. I will never come back again. Aunt Davis stood at the gate and watched me wipe away tears quietly. "Ma'am, are you really leaving?" Aunt Davis was there when I moved in. She is very kind to me and loves me like her own daughter. I think Aunt Davis is the only one who would truly shed tears because of my departure. I held Aunt Davis's hand with both of mine and smiled faintly. "You should congratulate me. This is a good thing for me." 8. Mark was very efficient and divided the property over quickly. I used the remaining balance in my account to buy a 200 square meter apartment that I had set my eyes on last month. The previous owner of this house immigrated, and it has been decorated in a French Romantic style. I fell in love with it at first sight. I didn't need to decorate it myself and could move in directly on the same day. I quickly signed the contract and asked the moving company to move all my luggage over. I found a few organizers early on, and within half a day, all my things were neatly and orderly organized. It was money well spent. I lay comfortably on the lounge chair in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, looking at the scenery outside. My life can finally begin again. Michael soon came over carrying a lot of bags. The first person I told after my divorce was Michael. I've gotten used to it over the years. I'll tell Michael everything, big or small, and he'll stand by me unconditionally. "Why do you carry so many things?" I saw he carried a lot of things. The first meal in the new house must be eaten at home, so I bought some vegetables. As he spoke, he put the items neatly into the refrigerator one by one. I bought some fruit and milk. Now that the weather is cold, I'll let them sit at room temperature before eating. Also, little housekeeper. I couldn't help but complain. But suddenly I saw the box on the ground shook violently and I was startled. "Michael, that box is moving." Michael smiled when he heard this. "This is a gift for you, come and open it." I was a little afraid, but I heard a faint cat's meow. My eyes lit up and I trotted over. I opened the box carefully, and it turned out to be a golden tabby. I squatted on the ground and observed the cats carefully. The cat Michael chose was particularly affectionate and rubbed against my calves. My heart is melting. Because Mark is a misophobe, I never thought about getting a kitten. The only one who knew that I liked cats was Michael. I hugged the cat and screamed, "Michael, you are like a worm in my stomach." I held it and played with it for a long time and named it Marshmallow. Michael prepared the meal quickly. Michael picked up a piece of sweet and sour pork ribs and gave it to me. "Can you be alone tonight?" He was a little worried about me, probably afraid that I would do something stupid. After all, he liked Mark so much before. Don't worry, I was the one who proposed the divorce. I no longer have any feelings for Mark. After the car accident, my mind suddenly became clear. Isn't it amazing? Michael saw that my relaxed expression didn't seem fake, so he smiled with relief. I'm really happy that you can figure it out. It's Mark who is not worthy of you. Now that you're divorced, do you want to go back to the company? Before I got pregnant, I helped my father manage the company. Later, when she became pregnant, her father handed the company over to Michael, who was 18 years old and still on summer vacation. The company's shareholders had many opinions, but it turned out that my father had a good vision. In just 2 months, the company's turnover doubled or tripled. Later, Michael managed the company while attending school, and he successfully became one of the most promising business rookies. I really wanted to go back to the corporate world, but I hadn't worked in 5 years. Michael put down his chopsticks and looked at me. With your ability, you will be able to get the hang of it quickly. Have you forgotten that you are shining in the business world? My heart was pounding. I still remember the joy I felt when I signed my first order in my life. I nodded and agreed to return to the company. But 2 days later it was my father's birthday, and Michael and I went home together. I told my parents anxiously, I am divorced. Patrick Young's face darkened and he raised his hand to hit me. Dad! Michael shouted at him. My mother ran over, stood in front of me and hugged me. With a choked voice she shouted at Patrick Young. What are you doing? We have ruined our daughter's first half of her life. She is an adult and she can make her own choices. Give her her life back. Suddenly, countless grievances surged into my heart, and I hugged my mother and sobbed. Patrick Young's eyes also turned red, and he slapped himself hard with his hand. Dad is useless. He let you get close to Mark even though he knew the Johnson family was a dangerous place. I am the one who has no right to blame you. My mother pulled me to the sofa and said, Abigail, if you want a divorce, go ahead. Mom and Dad have seen it all these years. Mom looked at Michael and me and said, Abigail, let Michael move in with you and take care of you. I think it's too much trouble for Michael. Besides, I'm such a grown-up and I still need my brother to take care of me. I can take care of myself. It's good enough that you didn't poison yourself with the meal you cooked. My mother didn't comment. When it comes to cooking skills, I smile embarrassedly. I love cooking and studying recipes, which are, as Mark and Andrew say, the ultimate dark cuisine. But fortunately, Michael loves to eat, so he has kept this hobby until now. At this time, Michael looked at me nervously. Abigail, you've never lived alone before, and there are still many things in the company that need to be handed over to you. I think it makes some sense. After all, I don't even eat the food I cook, so I can't always order takeout. Besides, I just returned to the company, and there are indeed many things I need to consult Michael on. Oh, and there are marshmallows, and Michael is needed to help clean up the poop. I immediately nodded and agreed. Michael breathed a sigh of relief and my mom smiled too. Who else but Michael treats you like a child? I think what my mother said is wrong. Michael is obviously a child in front of me. I really miss the glutinous rice dumplings that stuck to me every day when I was a child. 9. Although I am very busy at work, I haven't felt so fulfilled in a long time. The feeling of constantly defeating monsters and upgrading makes me full of energy. I worked overtime for several hours before returning home. The lights in the house were still on, and Michael was waiting for me to come home. I have always been used to waiting for Mark to come home, but this is the first time someone has prepared dinner at home waiting for me. Unconsciously, the corners of my mouth turned up. I walked into the living room and found Michael waiting for me and had fallen asleep. I tiptoed over with the blanket. As I approached, I was stunned. Michael was lying on a single recliner, and there was plenty of room for me to lie down. Michael was sleeping like he was on a kid's recliner, with his legs half extended and resting on it. Michael has grown up. I never thought about it that way before. Now if you look closely, Michael really has a great body. I lowered my eyes and fixed my gaze on his pectoral muscles. I looked very carefully and had no idea that Michael had raised his eyes to look at me. How did he get such good skin? It is white and delicate, and must feel very good to the touch, but if you use a little more force it might even leave red marks. His bathrobe was open low enough that I could see his half-grandfather's lover. There are traces of fitness and the white bulging. Even high up you can see a bit of alluring pink. Just looking at him smells so good. It must be very exciting to chew like this, maybe he will even cry. When I thought of the image in my head, my face instantly turned red. I shook my head frantically, trying to erase the image. He must be drunk. His mind is not clear. I just bent down to cover him with a blanket, and when I looked up inadvertently, I was suddenly met with a pair of bottomless eyes. I was so scared that I lost my balance and fell on Michael. My face was buried in his pectoral muscles and the pink near my mouth. My face turned red and I tried to get up from him, but the shaking recliner made it difficult for me to find a foothold. I just stood up a little, and the chair swayed and I fell onto Michael's chest again. Oh, this is forced, it's not what I want. Michael held my waist with his big hands. He sat up and controlled the shaking of the recliner. Abigail, what are you doing? His voice was still hoarse from just waking up. I raised the blanket in my hand to cover my face in embarrassment. I just wanted to cover you with a blanket. He laughed softly, his chest vibrating. Only then did I realize that I was still sitting on his lap. I angrily threw the blanket over Michael's head, quickly climbed off his legs and ran back to the room. 10. I have basically mastered the company's business in the past few days. I felt relaxed all over and was humming a song while walking. When I suddenly saw Mark's car in the community parking lot, I just felt unlucky. As I walked, I calculated how many days I had left to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get a divorce certificate. Andrew was blocking the elevator door. My father asked me to come find you. He was still sulking and wanted me to stop being so conceited. He asked me to apologize to you. He turned his head away from me proudly. I'm sorry, calling Amelia Mom last time was just a prank. He pursed his lips. Who knew you really lost your memory? It's okay, I said softly. Andrew turned to look at me, his eyes lit up. I looked at him and continued. Your father and I are divorced. From now on, you don't have to apologize to me no matter who you want to call Mom. Amelia will soon be your new mother. She's a very nice person, and you happen to like her very much. Your life will be happier in the future. He followed me all the way to my doorstep and showed no intention of leaving. Do you have anything else to do? If not, I'll close the door. Andrew opened his eyes wide in disbelief. I've already apologized to you. How could you not forgive me? You will regret this. Andrew looked at me stubbornly with tears in his eyes as I was about to close the door. This was the first time I treated him so coldly and heartlessly. He shouted angrily at the door. How dare you do this to me? When you regain your memory and remember me, don't ask me to forgive you. Even if you kneel down, I will not forgive you. The first time I heard Andrew say this, I hid in my room and cried secretly. I kept doubting myself, wondering if I had not taught him well, why my son didn't like me, and whether I was unworthy of being a mother. But now it's different, I feel no emotion at all. The mother-son relationship between Andrew and I ended when he called someone else Mom. 11. I often suspect Michael is seducing me, but I have no evidence. For example, right now, Michael is wearing casual home clothes and making me coffee. Wearing a soft cotton white t-shirt and gray pants, he looks like a college boy. No, he had just graduated from college. What a youth. I sighed as I lay on the sofa. Look at that hip, that waist. Wow, it's really pleasing to the eyes. No wonder they all like to keep male models. Michael came over with coffee, and I immediately started reading a magazine seriously. I took the coffee and took a sip. As soon as Michael sat down, Marshmallow jumped onto his lap and lay down. My eyes were drawn to watching Marshmallow stepping on Michael's gray pants. Wait, gray pants? I couldn't help but focus my eyes on a certain corner. It's huge. Michael leaned close to my ear and whispered something in my earlobe. Abigail, what are you looking at? My ears were itchy, my breathing suddenly stopped, and my eyes were wandering everywhere. I mean the cat has grown a lot. I rushed back to the room with a red face. I sent a message to my bestie. After Michael moved in with me, I felt like he was seducing me every day. Should I find a man? My best friend called me excitedly. You finally have eyes. You just realized that such a handsome guy has liked you for so many years. I am deeply confused. Does he like me? I thought he always treated me as his sister. I covered my chest. I didn't know where the joy at this moment came from. This is not nonsense. Anyone with a discerning eye can see that he likes you. You don't even know that he pretends to be a little white rabbit in front of you, but outside he looks as stinky as a big bad wolf and can scare people to death. What do you think? Since you're divorced, why don't you consider Michael? He's much better than that scumbag. I'm very confused right now. I'm busy enough with the company's affairs. I don't want to think about anything else. After hurriedly hanging up the phone with my best friend, another call came in. I answered and it was Mark. Abigail, Andrew has a fever and is crying for you. Can you go home and see him? The voice coming from the other end of the phone inexplicably carried a hint of pleading. I walked to the balcony and enjoyed the breeze. He said softly, Mark, I've called you like this several times before. This is also a first time, mother. Every time my baby gets sick, I panic and don't know what to do. Even though my family doctor was there, I still called Mark with trembling hands and cried, wanting him to come home. But what was his reaction? His cold voice at that time seemed to still echo in my ears. You said that it's fine if you can't take care of yourself, but how come you can't even take care of Andrew? Abigail, His voice was hoarse. You make a lot of sense, so now I just want to take care of myself. Abigail, have you recovered your amnesia? His voice was the most cautious I had ever heard. I didn't lose my memory from beginning to end. See you at the Civil Affairs Bureau in a month. Don't think that I will come back to you as soon as I recover my memory. I said every word. There is no possibility between us anymore. There seemed to be a sound of glass breaking over there. I hung up the phone without waiting for him to speak, and blocked his phone number. I will contact him again in a month. 12. From that day on I started to see Mark frequently, but he just sat in the car and looked at me quietly, and did not disturb my life. Maybe it's because I'm unwilling. Maybe it's the bad factors in men that make them think that what they can't get is the best. Anyway, when I see Mark now, I just treat him as a stranger passing by. Today is Sunday. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Andrew coming in with a big photo album. He was very familiar and squeezed in through the crack in the door and sat on the sofa. He completely forgot that the last time he came to me, he asked me to kneel down and beg for his forgiveness. Andrew opened the photo album and pulled me over. Mom, look, this is me when I was still in your belly, and this is me when I was just born. Isn't it cute? Grandma said I was the cutest baby in the whole hospital. He wanted to awaken my motherly love for him. But when I look at my photos, I can only feel heartache for myself back then. I looked very thin in the photo, but my belly was bulging. At that time, I was suffering from pregnancy reactions and vomited everything I ate. I looked haggard and my hair was dry. Andrew was also very naughty and always liked to kick me in the middle of the night. I looked at the photo and couldn't help but sigh. How selfish. Mom, what did you say? Andrew looked at me puzzled. In the photo, I am weak and thin because of pregnancy, but you only focus on yourself. You have no idea how hard it was for me to give birth to you after 10 months of pregnancy. Andrew will not empathize with me. He will not understand my efforts for him. He is just like his father, a sophisticated egoist. I closed the album and said, Go away. These photos only bring back painful memories for me. Andrew made a fuss and refused to leave, and was finally taken away by the Johnson family's housekeeper. Andrew was very unwilling to leave last time, and a few days later he came to me again with a ceramic plate. Look, Mom, this is the plate you made for me. You said you spent the whole day making it. Oh? Then why is it broken? He hesitated. But I know. It was smashed by him. He thought it was too ugly, and it would be embarrassing to take it to school. The flying ceramic fragments scratched my arm, and there is still an indelible mark. I don't have much artistic talent, but this ceramic plate is the best looking among the dozen or so I have made. Finally, Mark bought him an artist's work and asked him to take it to school. And this one I glued it together bit by bit. But no matter what it is, once there is a crack, it can never be repaired. This is already a defective product. I threw it into the trash can and it broke into pieces in an instant. Since there is a new replacement, there is no need to keep this one. Andrew froze as he looked at the broken plate. Then he thought of something and looked up at me happily. Mom, did you regain your memory and remember me? I shook my head. I haven't lost my memory. I just don't want to think about you and Mark anymore. I didn't intend to say anything more to Andrew and kicked him out. Andrew left in a daze. There was a social gathering at a dinner table in the evening, and Michael knew about it and insisted on coming. He was afraid that I would drink too much, but it turned out that he himself could drink even less. Both of us were drunk and couldn't drive. This place was close to home, so I supported Michael and planned to walk back, where we could get some cool air to sober up. While he was drunk, I asked him casually, "Michael, do you like me?" His dark eyes suddenly lit up, and he looked at me silently for a long time, then suddenly looked away, blushing and nodding heavily. My heart was pounding and I changed the subject. "What kind of wine did you just drink?" He thought for a moment and said, "It seems to be brandy." "Really?" "Bend down for a moment." He bent down obediently and looked down at me. His lips are soft and full, with a beautiful lip bead. I leaned over and gave her a kiss. It was so soft, like a marshmallow with a liquor filling. I licked my lips to savor it. Michael opened his eyes wide, drunken and stunned. I said nonchalantly, "Yeah, it really is brandy." I walked forward, leaving Michael frozen in place with a blush spreading to his ears. Michael quickly caught up with me and hugged me tightly, slightly bending his body to surround me, burying his head in my neck, as happy as a little child. He kept muttering, "Abigail, I like you so much." As soon as we got home, Michael seemed to sober up and pushed me against the door. "Abigail, can I kiss you?" When he saw me nod, he looked like a puppy seeing a bone, his eyes burning with fear. We kissed all the way to the bed. He pecked my collarbone lightly, and as if he felt my trembling, he paused. She leaned close to my ear and said in a moist voice, "Abigail, stop pushing me away." In the dark, I unbuckled his belt. 14. At the party organized by Mark's friends, Mark was drinking alone. He captured the gossiping conversations of people around him. Suddenly, with a bang, Mark overturned the table beside him. "What did you say? Michael is just the adopted son of the Shin family? He has always liked Abigail." Mark's face darkened instantly, and his voice was colder than ever before. Mark got really mad. His eyes were red and he threw all the wine bottles on the table to the ground. The air around them was stagnant. It was the first time that several people saw Mark get angry. They trembled and dared not speak. Mark suddenly thought of a fatal question. Michael never called him brother-in-law, nor did he ever call Abigail sister. This hypocrite. Mark immediately drove to Michael's company. As soon as he entered the office, he grabbed Michael by the collar and punched him. Mark gritted his teeth. "You're really great. I treat you as my brother-in-law, but you actually like your sister." Michael wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and smiled with contempt. "You are worthy of being my brother-in-law? Open your communication and take a look at the chat history with me." Although Mark was puzzled, he still opened his phone and looked for Michael's chat page. He found him very quickly because Mark would come to him for something every once in a while. Mark looked through the chat history and his face became paler and paler. "Accompany your sister to do the prenatal checkup. She has severe pregnancy reactions and is making a scene at home and refusing to eat. Please come over here. She is suffering from postpartum depression. If you have time, please accompany her to travel abroad." "I don't have time. Abigail has a fever. Abigail is throwing a tantrum again. I don't have time to deal with her. Please go and look after her for me. Abigail had a car accident. You come and take care of her." Michael responded to every message immediately. Michael never came to see him, nor did he ever come to see Abigail. These were all proposed by Mark himself. During this marriage, Michael accompanied Abigail to all 14 prenatal checkups, and he asked Michael to accompany her countless times when Abigail was sad. Michael fully assumed the role of husband in their marriage, and he reacted belatedly. He used to always express his admiration for the good relationship between the siblings. Michael is, after all, the CEO of a listed company, but as soon as he hears a message about Abigail, he will immediately drop his work and come over. Mark's hands were shaking as he flipped through the chat history, and Michael punched Mark hard in return. Mark didn't dodge and was hit hard. He staggered and held on to the wall. Michael looked at Mark coldly. "What do you think after reading it? I've been wanting to hit you with this punch for a long time. I asked you where you were when Abigail was having a difficult labor?" Michael answered for him. "Your wife and child were in a state of uncertainty, and you were watching Amelia's musical performance abroad. I asked you why she had a car accident. You were the one who dumped her on the highway for Amelia. Where were you when she was sick and in pain? Did you ever think about her being your wife when you left her again and again?" There was a hint of bitterness on Mark's lips. He wanted to refute, but these were all facts. It was as if a pair of hands were strangling his neck, like a thorn in his throat, and his mind went blank. When I heard from my assistant that Mark came to the company looking for Michael in a threatening manner, I immediately called the security guard and went to the top floor office together. Mark, what are you doing? As soon as I got out of the elevator, I saw Mark grabbing Michael's collar in anger. The security guard stepped forward to stop Mark, and I stood in front of Michael. The red and swollen corners of Michael's mouth were particularly obvious on his fair face. Tears welled up in his eyes and he looked pitiful. I touched his face with heartache. Is this your upbringing? I looked at Mark calmly. Mark staggered because he saw disgust in my eyes. Abigail, I'm hurt too. I looked away and left with Michael. Security, show him away. Don't let irrelevant people into the company from now on. 15. Mark asked Andrew to come to me again. Maybe he wanted to use my motherly love for Andrew to keep me. But I am no longer the same person I was before. Little boy, don't come to me again. I have divorced your father and I am no longer your mother. Andrew got flustered when he heard what I called him. Mom, Andrew wants to eat the dark food you made, wants Mom to tell him a bedtime story, and wants you to hold him while he sleeps. Andrew, anyone can do this. You're just not used to me not being around. I turned around and left. Andrew grabbed the hem of my skirt, his voice choked with sobs. No, Mom, Andrew really knows he was wrong. That day was just a prank by Andrew. I don't like Aunt Amelia at all. Andrew promised that he would never do that again next time. Dad is a liar. He said you would come back once you regained your memory, but you clearly remember Andrew, but you don't want Andrew anymore. Grandma Wong told me that my mother had a hard time when she was pregnant with me. It was because Andrew was so mean when he was little that he always made my mother angry. I looked down at him and said, Andrew, never wait until you lose something to appreciate it. Andrew hugged my thighs with tears in his eyes. Mom, have I lost you? This is the last lesson I teach you as your mother. I hope you will never speak ill of the people you love, or the people who love you. You must learn to respect others, and then others will respect you. People will leave when they are injured. Andrew was crying with tears and snot running down his face. He knelt on the ground and held onto the hem of my skirt tightly. Mom, give Andrew another chance. Andrew will definitely change his bad habits. Andrew will not be like his dad. Can you please trust Andrew for once? Andrew is my mother's baby. I helped him up and said, Andrew, your father and I have separated. I will never go back to that house again. He wiped his tears and said, Mom, if you don't want Dad, then I don't want Dad either. If you don't come to see me, how can I still come to see you in the future? I promise to be good. It's your freedom. People can never teach others, but things can teach people once. Without unforgettable experience, there can be no great enlightenment. I just hope that Andrew can put aside his arrogance and prejudice, be a good person himself, and stop disappointing those who love him. Don't follow his father's path again. 16. I signed a big contract at a client company and met Amelia when I was about to drive back. She invited me to have a drink in the cafe. Ms. Young, last time at the hospital, I thought Andrew was testing whether you really had lost your memory, so I didn't refute him. I do need to apologize to you for this. I shouldn't have interfered with your life and Mark's. I shouldn't have been tempted by money and become Andrew's teacher. Amelia lowered her head. You are not the reason why Mark and I are getting divorced. You don't have to blame yourself. I know you are not that kind of person. I still owe Amelia a favor. Amelia came to our class briefly during my sophomore year. At that time, Amelia's status in the Beijing Circle could be regarded as the little princess of the Beijing Circle, but she was neither arrogant nor impatient. She always smiled gently at people, and her inner self was very stable. At the age of 17, I was very vain and wanted to fit in with Mark's circle. I was often laughed at by them, but Amelia did not. She told me that only when you focus on yourself, the center of the universe will revolve around you. It turns out that she really sees things much better than I do. I quit that job after you left. I figured it out. I can't just live on the Johnson family's mercy. I need to become stronger. I opened my phone and transferred a file to Amelia. To repay Amelia's favor, I secretly investigated Taylor. Taylor's is a century-old company. It can no longer be described as rich. Expensive is more appropriate. Her sudden fall overnight was indeed suspicious, but I helped her find out some of the little tricks of her relatives abroad, and she can handle the rest herself. The Taylor family still has a great chance of making a comeback. After all, they have the financial resources, and a lean camel is still bigger than a horse. Amelia was very grateful to me when she saw the document, and suddenly thought of Mark again. Then you and Mark. I pointed out the window. Michael was standing outside in his gray coat, patiently waiting for me. She smiled and meant it. I wish you happiness. Mark really doesn't deserve it. Amelia left and said Mark wanted to see me for something. Mark told me in detail the good times that happened between him and me in the past. I interrupted him. You can go back in time, but there's no one there anymore. Mark grabbed my hand, his voice choked with sobs. Abigail, I am now certain that the person I love is you and only you. I let go of his hand. Speak very seriously. Love does not need to be confirmed. Only unconfirmed love needs repeated confirmation. He still continued to keep me. Abigail, tomorrow is my birthday. Usually, on my birthday you always make me a bowl of longevity noodles. I asked him back, Mark, did you know that last Sunday was my birthday? Mark pursed his lips slightly, thought for a few moments, and his face was full of regret. You see, the person you love most is actually yourself. I'm sorry. I'll give you the most magnificent birthday party ever. I shook my head. This wasn't about my birthday anymore. No need, Mark, you still don't understand. If you miss it, you miss it. I have already made an appointment. Let's go to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow to get the divorce certificate. After leaving you, I finally learned to love myself, so please don't disturb my life anymore. I turned and ran towards Michael. He has been waiting for me in the cold wind for a long time. I won't keep him waiting for me anymore. Mark. The moment I truly realized I had lost Abigail was when I received my divorce certificate. Before this, even on the day I signed the divorce agreement, I was fearless. I always believed that after Abigail regained her memory, we could still be like before. But I didn't expect that. She actually didn't lose her memory from beginning to end. I instantly fell into a huge panic, and it felt like something in my heart had slipped away. People are always slow to react, and only until they lose something do they truly understand the meaning of cherishing it. I started looking through her previous circle of friends and the daily life she had shared with me. I couldn't help laughing as I watched her vividly describe some things to me in the chat records. It turns out that the messages she sent me before were so interesting. It's just that most of the chat history is just a long string of messages from her. But I rarely reply and even rarely read them. Gradually, she started to send me fewer daily messages, and even stopped sending me messages on her own initiative. People's desire to share will never disappear. It will only shift. So she began to confide in Michael about the little things in her life. Before she knew it, Michael had infiltrated Abigail's life in every way. But I didn't care about it, thinking they were just good siblings. I have always enjoyed her kindness to me. Used to being loved. Always enjoying. Thought she would never leave. It wasn't until I actually lost her that I realized my mistake. Turns out that I love Abigail. But Abigail was gone. Andrew left too. He said he was going to boarding school. He didn't want anyone to take care of her. He said he could take care of himself. After Andrew left, I was the only one left in the huge house. It doesn't feel like a home anymore. There's not a trace of warmth. Abigail was so cruel. She left me nothing of her own. Sometimes I envy Andrew. At least he can see his mother every week and call her. All I can do is drink every day to numb my nerves. The images of her being around him in the past kept circling in his mind. I feel so much self-blame and regret, and I hate myself for having missed so many opportunities. My heart aches every night when I think about it, even though I met her a long time ago and she loves me so much. Obviously, I could be very happy. I ruined it all. As I looked through the only photo of us together at our wedding, tears started to flow. Why didn't my future self travel back 6 years to tell Mark not to hurt her? Not to push her away, not to let her go. If I had another chance, I would hold her hand tightly, and even death could not separate us. Unfortunately, there is no if. She is getting married. She was clearly my wife a few months ago. I was in a state of confusion, wondering how this could happen. I told Andrew the news that his mother was going to marry Michael. I hoped that he would feel as miserable as I did because his mother had cruelly abandoned us. But Andrew was not sad. He was happy for his mother. Mom and Uncle are very happy together. I hope Mom can be happy too. Yes, even a child knows that she is happier with Michael. Who am I to blame Abigail? I went to her wedding. The wedding that I couldn't have with her, Michael held for her. Andrew volunteered to be the flower boy. The wedding was a grand one, and I realized how beautiful Abigail looked in her wedding dress. I wish you happiness. Thank you. She smiled brightly. She has let it go. And I have missed happiness. I will never be happy in my life. This is the biggest punishment for me.